Good evening, everyone. I'm David Gregory, moderator of Meet the Press, and welcome to the Tsongas Center at the University of Massachusetts Lowell for tonight's U.S. Senate debate, co-sponsored by the university and the Boston Herald. I am joined, of course, by the two candidates, Ms. Elizabeth Warren and Senator Scott Brown. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here. Just a note about the rules tonight. Basically, there are none. It's Meet the Press style. No set time limits, just what I hope is a healthy discussion of the important issues facing this country and in this race, and a chance for the two of you to debate each other and have a healthy, cordial exchange between the two of you. There's a lot to get to. I know I speak for all of us when I thank the university and all of your supporters and detractors for being here tonight. So I'd like to get right to it. And I'd like to begin where it seems this campaign has been of late, and that's in the area of the personal, some personal friction and issues between the two of you. Ms. Warren, I want to start with questions about your Native American heritage. There seem to be a lot of questions about this, and I want to see if we can clear some of these things up. You've acknowledged that you listed yourself as a minority in a faculty directory in 1986. You continued to list yourself in those directories until 1995. Do you consider yourself a minority? And if not, is there any other reason then for some kind of benefit that you would list yourself in such directories?
You know, I have answered this question many, many times, and it starts with the fact that from the day I was born until the day my mother died, she told me about who I am, who we are, who my brothers are, who my family is. And I have never used the information about our Native American heritage to get any advantage, not to apply to college, not to apply to law school, and not to get hired for any job. I was listed in a directory as, I listed myself as Native American. I was listed there. It's part of who I am.
Do you consider yourself a minority?
I consider myself as having a Native American background. That's what I said. That's what I am.
Senator Brown, you have a website that's been created by your campaign that says we're getting to know the real Elizabeth Warren. And it allows people to check whether she's a hypocrite or a fake Indian. So who is the real Elizabeth Warren? She's sitting right here. Is she a liar? Is that your judgment?
Well, David, you'd have to ask her who she actually is, but I think we need to reflect back and talk about what this campaign is really about, which is obviously the jobs and the economy, and there are other important things, but part of this race is also integrity and character and trustworthiness. And there's a test that you take, and I believe she's failed that test. And if you look back and see what we're talking about here, no one's questioning what her parents told her when she was younger or all the way through that time frame. But when she was asked by the Boston Herald, why is Harvard touting her as a minority, a woman of color, a Native American, she said she didn't know. And then after 5 weeks of misleading the papers and the reporters, she said, I self-reported. And she's never answered why she in fact did that. Now she's also said that as time has gone on, I can't change who I am. That's the nature of her commercials. I can't change who I am. But as we noticed throughout her life, up until she was 38 years old, she was white. And then she self-reported, as she referenced, and she changed her nationality to Native American. And then as she was being considered for recruitment by as a result of that directory, she was being recruited to Ivy League schools. At the pinnacle of her success, when she became tenured at Harvard, she then changed back to being white. So when she says she can't change who she is, she actually did it twice.
Do you have any evidence at all, Senator, to suggest that Ms. Warren benefited, was hired, because she was Native American or minority?
Well, I think the real issue, David, is what is she telling the people not only in Massachusetts?
That's a direct question, Senator. You've suggested that she's being dishonest. So I'm wondering, do you have any evidence that suggests she got hired other than her credentials?
The best way to answer that is for her to release her personnel records, which she's refused to do. I've released 32 years of my military records, and I think the fact that she has not released those records speaks volumes.
Are you hiding something?
No, I'm not. And you know, the question about character, I've answered the questions about how I was born, what I learned growing up, and also that I never used it for college, for law school, or to get a job. And remember, others have backed me up. The Boston Globe has interviewed 24 people on this. Charles Fried, Solicitor General of the United States, led the hire under Ronald Reagan and said in print, he's voted for Scott Brown, led the hiring committee and said we didn't even know about it until years later. But I want to say something about character, since that's the issue. You know, I think character is how you live your life. I'm the daughter of a janitor who ended up as a professor at Harvard Law School and working for the President of the United States. I am proud of the 2 children I've raised, of the husband I've had for 32 years whom I adore, and my 3 grandchildren. I have taught school, I have taught generations of students, and I hope occasionally inspired a few of them. And I have worked hard for 30 years to make the legal system just a little bit fairer for people. I think that's a good test of character.
Do you have any regrets about how you've handled this over time? Have you muddied this issue or muddled the issue in the course of this campaign?
You know, I wish I had been faster in answering the question, but the truth is the truth. I believe my mother, and I can't imagine what kind of test of character it would be to say that my mother lied to me from the day I was born until the day she died.
Senator, bottom line, is this disqualifying?
No, no, of course not. Listen, there's no question that she's a qualified academic. She's a good teacher. And as a matter of fact,
do you doubt in any way her credentials as a scholar that would have led her to be hired by some of the most important universities?
No, I don't. But I do question the fact that she misled the voters for over 5 weeks, saying she had no idea how Harvard came to know that she was a Native American. And she in fact, was the person who self-reported. And once again, no one's questioning about what our parents tell us as we grow up. But as you get older, she has an affirmative obligation to check when you're making a disclosure such as that, when you're actually looking at taking something that is really meant for somebody who has been truly disadvantaged by years of discrimination. I think it's something you really need to double check on.
All right, final point on this. Go ahead, Ms.
I just think on this point that Senator Brown is now raising, he's just wrong. I misheard a question at a very noisy press conference. I came back, I answered it when I understood it. And that's it. To try to turn this into something bigger is just wrong.
Let me ask you, Senator Brown, because a question about your own credibility has been raised. This got some attention back in June on a radio program. You talked about having secret meetings with kings and queens and prime ministers in your job as senator. You said in your campaign said you misspoke, but in fact, this is something that you said on multiple occasions. Were you guilty of exaggeration here?
No, David. Actually, I was trying to make a point that when we're talking about the economic issues from meeting with people who are in leadership positions in other countries, and you've met a lot of the same people I have met, they talk about jobs and the economy and the fact that the number one thing we need to focus on is jobs in the economy, from those wealthy and important leaders all the way down to the poorest farmers. I never met the poorest farmer either, but it's about presenting a scenario where we can point out that there are very serious issues affecting our jobs in the economy. But let me talk about mistakes. I've made mistakes, David. I will make more mistakes. As a matter of fact, before I got elected on my victory night, I said my daughters are available on national TV, and that was a pretty good mistake. And I'm still paying for that one. But the difference between when I make a mistake, I correct it. I immediately corrected it. Professor Warren, when she made a mistake and really misled the voters of Massachusetts, it's not she didn't hear the question. This went on for 5 weeks of people of the media asking her specifically how they came to know that she was a Native American.
And she responded to that. I got to ask you this. He always calls you Professor Warren. Do you think he's needling you, trying to cast you as an elitist professor in the eyes of the voters? Does that bother you?
It doesn't bother me.
Can I just say something?
I worked hard for this, and it doesn't bother me.
Listen, the Boston Globe reported today that she's very proud of being a professor. Whenever I see my professors from school, I say, hello, Professor Gittleman or Professor so-and-so. It's certainly meant, she's earned the title. She is now a sitting professor at Harvard Law School.
You both have done legal work as attorneys, and there's been some discussion and charges back and forth about clients that you've represented. You have released a list of those clients that have come up. Senator Brown, to my knowledge, you have not.
I did, actually. I released it about a week ago. I'm a real estate attorney representing small banks out of a home office. So, yeah, I did that last week.
So as far as I'm aware, in terms of the lawyers that I know, and I know quite a few, legal work entails becoming an advocate for clients, not necessarily an advocate for a particular policy position. Is there a reason that you two doubt each other based on the clients you've represented, that it should somehow be an issue in this campaign, Ms. Warren?
Well, actually, let's start with that disclosure part. I haven't seen a list of Senator Brown's clients. All I know was that Senator Brown said at a press conference last week that somehow over the last 25 years, while he's been out there working in the public interest and representing people here in Massachusetts, that he also was representing banks and mortgage companies. But I haven't seen a list of those clients, and I didn't realize that it had been made public. Is that right, that there's a public list now of all the clients that Senator Brown had and the work he did for them?
Professor, with all due respect, the only person that's required to provide a list is you, when you actually have to provide it on a yearly basis to Harvard. And when asked if there was in fact a list, you said no, there's no list. Well, we find out that there is in fact a list, and apparently she's released it tonight. I made it very clear last week. People know that I am a real estate attorney. I have an office in my home. I represent a couple of small cooperative banks, and I represent the United States government as a JAG. But David, no, if I may, the real issue here is we want to talk about clients. The real client here and whose side you're on and the corporate representation, it is important. You asked if it's important. It is. Because throughout the routine that Professor Warren has been saying throughout this campaign, she's out there representing the little guy. She's out there representing the workers. LTV Steel is a company that she represented in an effort to deny union workers, coal miners, their health benefits. She got paid a 5-figure salary, and she was on the side when no one was watching and when she had a choice to make, when the cameras weren't rolling. She chose to side with the steel conglomerate. In addition to that, Travelers Insurance, she got paid almost $250,000 to represent a large insurance company, one of the largest in our country, to actually hurt victims of asbestos and deny them the benefits. Now, she'll say, oh, I was setting up a trust. There's no way that Travelers Insurance is going to set up a trust and work for the victims when, in fact, they're paying her as a hired gun.
Before Ms. Warren responds, hold on one second, 2 points. Have you released what exactly you did for those clients?
I've already said it publicly. I don't know how much more public I have to get.
I've been on this. I was
asked. Yeah, I'm a real estate attorney. I do closings.
Okay,
and I'm also a JAG. I work with the Army.
Here's my follow-up question, and I framed it just a moment ago. Do you believe that as an advocate, as an attorney, she was actually adopting the positions that she took, or was she making an argument on behalf of a client, just as you would do as an attorney?
Sure,
there is a distinction, is there not?
That's a great question. But when the lights aren't on and the media's not looking, you have a choice. And
to take the client or not?
Listen, she had the choice to take this client. She got paid $250,000, almost $250,000.
But you're not suggesting that lawyers agree with every client that they take on. Is that fair?
David, all I know is in this particular instance with LTV Steel in particular.
It's a straightforward question. You're an attorney. You think attorneys agree with every position that they take on for their clients?
I think that attorneys have an absolute choice. They can absolutely deny.
To take them or not take them?
Absolutely.
Ms. Warren, respond, please.
Well, so I want to start with what Senator Brown is trying to do here. Doesn't want to have to talk about his votes, so he just keeps making charges.
We're going to get there. That's not fair. We're going to get there.
So he just keeps making charges. And let's start with the question about the cases that he says I've represented. You know, I'm a teacher. I have been out there as a consumer advocate. I've been writing books. I've been working in a field. And from time to time, I have taken on a client. And I have done it because there was an important legal issue at stake. For me, it was about protecting individuals. It was about protecting employees. It was about protecting homeowners. It was about protecting people to make sure they didn't get run over, often by banks, and that the system really continued to work for them. That was what I did. And I've done it I worked with Senator Kennedy for 15 years in this field. I wrote books, and I even went to the United States Supreme Court. For Senator Brown to say that my work hurt asbestos victims is just simply not only not true, it is in exactly the wrong direction. I've been out there working for asbestos victims for years, including going to the United States Supreme Court to try to protect a $500 million judgment for them and to try to make sure that there's a system set up so that people who have asbestos-related diseases, which continue to show up year after year after year, it gets in someone's body, they don't know for sure whether they have it or not until sometimes years later, a way for those people to be compensated. The asbestos victims have stood up and said, Senator Brown is wrong. and he has crossed a line. These are the people whose fathers have died, whose uncles have died, whose cousins have died, and they are the ones who are being attacked by Senator Brown now. He says...
It seems the charge is that as a consumer advocate, as
yes.
you are, was it a mistake to take on these clients, corporate clients in this instance?
Absolutely not. I would do it again, because what I was out there doing was trying to help protect the asbestos victims. The asbestos workers know that. The lawyers for the asbestos victims have described Senator Brown's charges as deliberately dishonest. Even the Boston Globe has described them as misleading. I was out there working for asbestos victims. I went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and if I had the chance, I would do it again.
You're obviously
because it's the right thing to do.
David, with all due respect, Travelers Insurance Company is not going to pay $250,000 to Professor Warren to be a hired gun to work for the victims. So that's laughable. Let's get that right out. The victims excuse me, if I could finish.
Insurance company versus insurance company. Two insurance companies were fighting in the United States Supreme Court. If one of them won, then the asbestos victims would have a chance to get another $500 million in payments, and there would be a device to pay them over time.
David, once again, with all due respect, she got paid, the victims of the asbestos cases got 1/40th of what she got paid. Some of them have never received a penny. It's laughable to think that she was working for the victims to set up a trust so these people get paid. A lot of them have not been paid to this date, and they got 1/40th of what she actually paid. But let's assume that she's correct on the asbestos matter. The LTV Steel is a whole different situation. For the union workers listening and watching, I'm a union member. There's only one person in this race who's been fighting for union issues, and that's me. She had an opportunity to side with the little guy. She had an opportunity to side with the little guy and actually work. And once again, when the lights weren't shining and the people weren't watching, she made a choice to side with the large conglomerate and actually got paid another 5-figure salary to deny the health care benefits for people who negotiated those settlements.
Go ahead, final point on this.
So Senator Brown, once again, is just making things up. The reality is that in the case of the coal companies, which he's talking about here, and Black Lung, that everyone was going to get paid. It was a question of protecting a particular legal principle, but everyone was going to get paid. And let's be clear, Senator Brown is the one who is not working with the unions. The unions have endorsed me. The asbestos workers said I was on their side, not Senator Brown. The coal workers have said I was on their side, not Senator Brown. And he can't change the facts.
Excuse me, just one final thought. Senator Rockefeller, when she was advocating for that, said if that legislation, unfortunately, that effort did not prevail. That's why the people got their benefits. Had she prevailed, they would have unraveled the benefits that these people were going to receive.
I think voters have gotten a sense of both sides of this. I want to talk about national politics here. And I can tell you, living in Washington and traveling and reporting around the country, and I think you both know it here in Massachusetts, there is such disgust with Washington because of dysfunction, because Washington doesn't work. So a question about bipartisanship here. Senator, let me ask you this. You've said of Mitt Romney that he's one of your strongest and earliest backers. He said, this is a quote from you, "When it comes to dealing with the economic issues, there's no one I would trust more than Governor Romney." Would you be a reliable ally of a President Romney?
Well, David, I think you pointed out in your initial comment about the dysfunctionality of Washington. I'll tell you, when I went down there, I thought it was dysfunctional. And when I got there, it was even worse. And it still is, and you see it every day. And that's why I have taken great pride, and I'm speaking to the independent voters of Massachusetts and being that independent voice. I vote about 50% with my party and about 50% with the Democratic Party, and that's a lot different than what Professor Warren would do to be in lockstep. So to answer your question, I don't work for anybody. I don't work for President Obama or Mitt Romney or Mitch McConnell or Harry Reid. I work for the people of Massachusetts. That's what being an independent is all about. And a good idea is a good idea, regardless of where it comes from. And that's evidenced by my voting record in being named the least partisan senator in the United States Senate.
But it is striking that you support Governor Romney for president, I assume.
Well, as I said, he's going to, when it comes to dealing with the economic issues, yes, absolutely. But we're two different people. I mean,
But you'd be a reliable ally when it came to his economic plan.
Listen,
is that
it comes
fair?
down to what the issue is. It's difficult to get
on his economic plan, because you said there's nobody better than him, that no one I would trust more than Governor Romney.
Well, I also would like to read the bills, as I do, because a lot of people don't read the bills down there. I want to read them, see how they affect Massachusetts, our country, our debt, and our deficit, and vote. I am a reliable vote for the bill, and that's evidenced by my voting record.
But it is striking that if you look at some of your campaign ads, the figure you see is President Obama, as you're touting your work with the administration and President Obama. We couldn't find any instance with you with Governor Romney. You haven't made any campaign appearances with him, and there is an appearance, Senator, that you are distancing yourself from Governor Romney to appeal to voters here, specifically in Massachusetts, where being too close to him may be a problem.
Well, once again, I am, as you know, I am the second most bipartisan senator in the United States Senate. I take great pride in that independence, and I was honored to stand with the President in the White House when we passed the insider trading bill to prohibit members of Congress from doing insider trading. I was also proud to stand with him when we did the Hire a Hero Veterans bill. Of course I'm going to be proud to stand with the President. He is our President, and when he does something well, I praise him.
You're not distancing yourself from Governor Romney.
Listen, he's out campaigning all over the country. I mean, I'm here in Massachusetts. I'm running in Massachusetts, and while I said he would handle the economic issues well, we certainly need to start focusing on those economic issues, because as you know, we're in a $16 trillion national debt.
Okay.
We have runaway deficits each and every year. We need to have good people down there to focus on a bipartisan manner. We don't need rock throwers. We don't need people who are going to leave blood and teeth in the streets, as Professor Warren has said. We need people who are going to work together to find common sense solutions.
In this state, the legacy of Senator Kennedy is well known, and part of that legacy is being willing to compromise, working with Republicans. Can you name some Republicans in the Senate today that you are able to work with on big issues, substantive issues that the country faces?
I think probably Richard Lugar would be one that would come to mind,
He's not going to be there.
He's not going to be there.
Who else gets your name, Senator?
That is a problem. Let me do this one slightly. Let me just ask
the question, though. Are there any Republicans who are actually going to be in the Senate that you feel you could work with substantively and compromise with?
Look, it depends on what the subject matter is. Let me give you an example. On the question of Fannie and Freddie, we're going to have to
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, GSEs who guarantee 90% of the mortgages in the country.
The Republicans have said across the spectrum, we need to revise Fannie and Freddie. I think they're right. And I think that's an issue on which I can work with virtually every Republican in the United States Senate, because it's an important issue for financing mortgages for people across this country. And it's something I can do. And let me say, I've actually had experience working across the aisle. When I first went to Washington was during the financial crisis in 2008. And I was the head of a bipartisan commission, Republicans and Democrats. We took on some of the most difficult and challenging issues facing the country. We made reports and recommendations every 30 days. And I'm very proud to say that about half of our recommendations were unanimous. We started with a basic principle that we could agree on about what was happening during the crisis or a particular problem, and we worked out from there to build something that was useful. But at the end of the day, the reason I'm in this race is not about partisanship. It's about working families. I will work with anyone, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Vegetarian, if they will work for America's families.
Senator,
I think that's what it's about.
You talk about bipartisanship. One of your first votes, if you are reelected, would be to cast a vote for majority leader or minority leader, depending upon how all these races turn out. Would you vote for Mitch McConnell to be the leader of the Republicans?
If I could just respond.
Can you just answer that question and then go on?
I'd like to respond to what you said. And
just answer that question. It's a simple yes or no question. Would you vote for McConnell or not?
This is a debate, and I'd like to have a chance to respond, and then I'll answer your question. Thank you. With regard to working with somebody, With regard to working with any person on the opposite side of the aisle, she couldn't reference one person except someone who's retiring, a truly bipartisan gentleman, Senator Lugar. I have a history since day one. My third vote was voting for Harry Reid in the President's jobs package. I have a history of working across the aisle, 54% with my party. Every other member of the delegation is 93, 94% and above. Professor Warren would be 100%. Now, when it comes to dealing with the majority or minority leader, I've already let it be very clearly known to Mitch McConnell that I'm completely disgusted as to what's going on down there. And he has a lot of work to do to earn my vote because I don't work for him or Harry Reid. That's the beauty of being independent. When I walk in, I can go and vote however I want. And you've seen it. You've talked about it. You have evidence of it. There's absolutely no evidence that Professor Warren would be voting and working across the aisle because no other member of the delegation right now does it. Very few members of the Democratic Party right now do it. Thank goodness we have people like me and others like me, Senator Snowe, Senator Carper, Senator Collins, Senator Lugar. There are other people down there who can actually get things done.
So undecided about
Undecided. I've already made it very clear with them.
So I'd just like to say two things. The first is that when Senator Brown talks here in Massachusetts about how very bipartisan he is and how very independent he is, he's sure not saying the same thing when he goes around the country raising money in this Senate campaign. He goes around this country, and what he says to people around this country is that they should contribute to his campaign because if he's reelected, that increases the odds that the Republicans will control the Senate and that he can block President Obama's agenda. So let's just be honest about what's going on here.
Warren, given his votes, do you believe that his goal is to block and obstruct President Obama's agenda?
On economic issues, I absolutely do.
In
fact, I can do the examples.
Okay.
Let's start with, we had 250,000 people unemployed here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts last fall, and President Obama put forward a jobs bill. The first jobs bill would have supported 22,000 jobs here in the Commonwealth. Senator Brown voted in lockstep with every other Republican, no, and we didn't get the jobs bill. A few weeks later, there was a jobs bill to prevent the layoffs of teachers, of firefighters, of police officers all across this Commonwealth and across this country. Senator Brown voted in lockstep with the Republicans, voted no, and we didn't get that bill through.
Excuse me, David,
weeks after that, there was a third jobs bill. It would have supported 11,000 jobs, mostly in construction, to repair transportation that we needed. And Senator Brown voted in lockstep with all of the other Republicans. And just to put icing on the cake, he voted against unemployment insurance extensions 16 times for people who were out of work. Senator Brown has made clear where he stands.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you. First of all, she's obviously misstating the facts. These were rejection by both Democrats and Republicans, Professor. It wasn't a... if you're going to comment on my record, I would at least have you refer to it. Excuse me. Excuse me. We're not...
Go ahead,
excuse me. I'm not a student in your classroom. Please let me respond, okay? Thank you. With regard to the jobs bills, they were rejected in a bipartisan manner, number one. They raised over $450 billion of new taxes. In addition, the unemployment benefits, there was no one that lost any unemployment benefits. Listen, my mom was on welfare. I remember that it's there as a safety net for people. But we also tried to find a way to actually pay for it. And Professor Warren would have actually voted against it because we had a compromise that the president put forth. And she said that she would not have supported that compromise by not only extending the tax policy that's been in place for 10 years, but also the unemployment benefits that we had. She would have voted against that because she wanted to raise taxes on some of the folks within that bracket. We actually did it. No one lost any benefits. No one lost any benefits. I was proud to vote for the bill. And as you know, when you're in Washington, you have to go back and forth and negotiate out a final solution of the bill.
Let me extend this a little bit because there'll be more discussion about how to create jobs, which is such a crucial focus. But I also want to talk about the fiscal cliff and the debt. As you know, the Simpson-Bowles Commission which has gotten so much discussion around the country. Senator Simpson, Erskine Bowles, former chief of staff, and they came up with a plan that said, look, we got to cut $4 trillion of the debt, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to cut spending to the tune of $3 trillion, but we're also going to deal with the tax code. We're going to broaden the base. More people should pay taxes, they say. We should eliminate some of these exemptions and deductions. And so we're going to get $1 trillion from that. And in the process of doing that, we're going to lower rates for everybody. And about 10% of that, we're going to pay down the debt. Why is that not a common sense, practical solution, Senator? Because you have not said whether you'd vote up or down on Simpson Bowles.
You have to ask Harry Reid why it never came up. Bottom line is these are bills that we have a lot of great ideas and a lot of discussion, but we can't get them to the floor.
Well, but you never said whether you'd vote for it or not. I'm asking you, why is that not a common sense approach?
I have said that I think evidenced by what I've already done, I would keep an open mind and work with any people of goodwill down there to make sure that we can actually get something done. Because as you know, the President commissioned that study, and then he gave a State of the Union speech and put out a budget and didn't do anything on that. We haven't had a budget in the Senate for 4 years. We need to actually get our fiscal and financial house in order, and there are many things that we need to do.
Revenue increases a realistic approach and an appropriate approach if you have that kind of trade-off. $3 trillion in spending cuts and some revenue increases to pay down the debt.
You know what the problem is, David, is every single time they say in Washington, people have a feeling that they don't raise taxes in Washington. They raise taxes all the time. We have a health care bill that's raising 18 new taxes. We have other taxes that are going into effect on a daily basis. We have a very, very serious spending problem in Washington. They're like pigs at a trough.
Right. But can you really
the more money you give Washington, the more they're going to spend it.
Can you simply cut your way to a balanced budget?
I'm not going to be raising taxes on any Americans in the middle of a 3.5-year recession, because as the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the foremost independent business group, said that doing the proposals that Professor Warren wants to push will cut 700,000 jobs nationally and 17,000 in Massachusetts.
We're talking about lowering marginal rates, getting rid of deductions,
I'm happy to keep an open mind and certainly look at the proposals, but they're not coming forward.
So new revenues would be on the table for you.
Are you talking about closing deductions
yes.
and loopholes? I've already closed the ethanol subsidy. I've already done that.
What about the mortgage interest deduction?
Of course not. That's something that's actually going to help middle-class families. If we want to do this and we want to do it right, you can't be pitting groups against each other and individuals and businesses. You need to actually put them all on the table and sit down together in a truly bipartisan manner, and that's the difference between Professor Warren and me.
Go ahead.
That independent voter to be able to get down there and work with people on both sides of the aisle, as I've actually done since I've been there.
Ms. Warren.
So what Senator Brown doesn't want to talk about is that he has signed an extremist right-wing pledge never to raise taxes on millionaires and billionaires. That's the Grover Nordquist pledge.
David, if I may comment on that, I actually
wants to extend the Bush tax cuts for everybody, right?
That's exactly
millionaires,
right.
Billionaires, and people who make less than $250,000.
Let's just watch how that has worked out. So, for example, the Buffett rule, the idea that billionaires should pay at least as much in taxes as their secretaries do. Scott Brown, along with every other Republican, voted no and said no, it was fine with them if billionaires paid less than their secretaries do. Oil subsidies. The oil companies made $137 billion in profits last year. And yet, when the vote came up to get rid of the oil subsidies, Senator Brown voted in lockstep with all the other Republicans to say no. We're going to let them keep the subsidies. That's just wrong. And then the big vote, this is the really amazing one, just about a month ago, when the question came up about letting the Bush tax cuts expire, Senator Brown voted to say that he would let taxes rise for 98% of the families here in Massachusetts and 97% of the small businesses. He would hold them hostage unless there were tax cuts for the top 2%.
Let me press you on a matter as I did to Senator Brown, and you can respond.
I think that's just
a chance to at least respond.
You will respond in just a moment, Senator. I'm also trying
to,
press both sides here on what you're saying. Okay, that's I hope one of the reasons that I'm here. On the question of Simpson Bowles,
yes,
would you accept $3 trillion worth of spending cuts, painful as they may be, if you got some revenue increases. Is that not a fair approach?
So the point of Simpson-Bowles, let me just do this at different levels. Simpson-Bowles using a balanced approach that we must have cuts and we must have revenue increases, I completely agree with. I think that is the right approach. It is a moderate, sensible approach, and it is not the approach that Scott Brown and the Republicans have used.
But President Obama didn't follow that approach either.
They've said, no, he is trying to use a balanced approach because he has put forward proposals that would increase revenues. Senator Brown and I both submitted our economic proposals to the Boston Globe, who sent them out for independent economic analysis.
I want to get him response, but you just talked about that. Senator Brown, respond to what she said previously. I just wanted to ask you that specific question on Simpson Bowles.
It's been so much. I'd like to have an opportunity to actually go one by one. On oil subsidies, if anybody thinks by raising taxes on our energy producers is going to be passed off in terms of savings to motorists in the middle of a 3.5-year recession and with the high cost of energy coming out, it's not going to happen. They're going to pass off they're going to pass all of those off to our motorists and homeowners, and everybody knows that. If you want to have a comprehensive discussion about energy, then we should have it: wind, solar, nuclear, hydro, geothermal, coal, siting, permitting, conservation, and true all of the above approach. She's against the Keystone Pipeline, which is union and non-union jobs to help us stabilize our energy in this country. She's also against she's also in favor, obviously, of wind and solar, but we need more of an approach on that. So let me just talk about the Buffett rule as well, because I had to write down the various things. The Buffett rule, it funds the government for a day. It makes a great soundbite, but it funds the government for a day. But more importantly, we have our own Buffett rule here in Massachusetts, David. And when she's been out there telling about everybody paying higher taxes, she had a choice to pay higher taxes herself, and she chose not to do that. That's number two. Number three, all of her criticisms, every single one of her criticisms of me is that I don't want to raise taxes. That's correct. I do not want to raise taxes on any American in the middle of a 3.5-year recession when people are, when I go to businesses, they don't say, hey, Scott, by the way, please take more of my hard-earned money and bring it to Washington. They don't say that. They say we've been taxed enough, we've been regulated enough, and the only person sitting at this table who's a fiscal conservative is me.
All right, let me get a break in here. We're going to come back. We're going to hear from some of the students. We'll have more of our discussion. Everybody's had a chance back and forth. We'll take a break. Be back with our debate in just a few minutes.
I developed new science and technology for soldier protection.
I've won 4 Grammys.
I started Android, and ultimately we sold that to Google.
Students from UMass
on with my experience there.
I feel like that definitely applied to me.
I know firsthand that these are top students, and I know they're going to succeed like I did.
Welcome to the Boston Herald newsroom, where we've moved from just a newspaper to a multi-platform news organization. I'm Jessica Heflin. We give our audience the most up-to-date and compelling news coverage, from our groundbreaking online videos to our comprehensive website and print edition. We've won national recognition from the museum, and editor and publisher featured us among the newspapers that do it right. As a result, more people are checking out Herald content than ever before, so thank you, and be sure to check us out at bostonherald.com.
Because no one could have predicted this.
Rebound, score! Riverhawks win!
Because this car never runs out of gas. Because you won't believe what you just saw. Because a blue-collar city deserves a blue-collar captain. Because a sold-out crowd can't be wrong. Because October can't come soon enough. 2012-2013 season tickets are on sale now.
Debates are pure democracy. The Boston Herald is proud of its tradition of hosting historic political debates. I'm Pat Purcell, publisher of the Boston Herald. It all started here at Faneuil Hall in 1988 with the first Democratic presidential candidates debate. 6 years later, who can forget?
My opponent is multiple choice.
From Ted Kennedy and Mitt Romney.
I've held that view consistently.
To Mitt Romney and Shannon O'Brien, to Deval Patrick and Charlie Baker. It's been a great run. It's not over yet. Let's get back to tonight's debate.
We are back in our U.S. Senate debate, and we have Elizabeth Warren and Senator Scott Brown. We're talking about the economy generally and how to create jobs. It's been a big issue and certainly a concern to some of the students here at UMass about job creation in this very tough economy that you both are dealing with on the campaign trail. I want to introduce Mary Kate Hazel, who has a question as a UMass student, and I'm going to turn it over to her. Please take the mic and ask your question, and Ms. Warren respond.
Good evening. My name is Mary Kate Hazel, and I'm a senior here at UMass Lowell studying history and political science. In May, I will graduate in this very arena. I'm not scared of growing up or going out into the real world, but I am afraid that I won't be able to find a job. So my question for you is, if elected, what specific programs or policies will you propose or support to help students like me find jobs after graduation?
Good. It's a great question, and I think the answer has both a short-term part to it and a long-term part to it. In the short term, we've got an economy that's still struggling to recover, and that shows up in lots of different ways. And it's why I support Jobs Bill. The President has proposed a Jobs Bill. It's part of his proposal for getting this economy jump-started. Why? Because a Jobs Bill will put paychecks in people's hands and get work done that we need to get done. Repair roads and bridges. Once we've got those paychecks in people's hands, they spend them in the local economy, they spend them with businesses, that creates more demand, the businesses hire more people, and that helps the economy get going. In the short run, I think it's exactly the right thing to do, and I was very disappointed when Scott Brown and the Republicans blocked it. But in the long run, I think there's another answer, and that is how we create jobs for the future. And I believe the answer is we have to invest in the future. We have to make this a great place to grow jobs. And the way I see that is we make those investments in education, in roads, in bridges, in water, in power, in research, in the things that give us all of the energy going forward, so that this is a good place to build jobs. And I'll put one little last part in it. You're in a great state when you're in Massachusetts, because Massachusetts is on the cutting edge of what we can do in new energy, in clean energy, in building innovation and tech. We're doing it in biotech. We're making the new advances for the whole rest of the country, for the whole rest of the world. We can invent it here in Massachusetts, and we can build it here in Massachusetts. But to do that, we need a good federal partner, someone in Washington who will be there to fight for us and to invest in us.
Senator Brown,
that's what
same question.
Well, thank you for your question, and obviously congratulations and good luck. We live in the greatest country in the world, and we live in one of the greatest states in the country. Massachusetts is an innovative state. We have high-tech biopharma, and the challenges that they're facing as I travel all around Massachusetts is the lack of regulatory and tax certainty. People are concerned. They don't know what's next. They don't know what the tax policy is going to be. They don't know what new regulations are going to be imposed on them. And as a result, there's less people hiring and even looking to hire. As I was with Diane Henry, who is an unemployed mom of 4, she's been trying to find jobs. The first time in her life she's on food stamps. And one of the challenges that she has found as she traveled around looking for jobs is that the people are scared to hire. And it's the tax policies that are being pushed. They're a real factor. As you know, and don't take it from me, take it from the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. A lot of the proposals that are being pushed by Professor Warren are jobs-destroying messages. And as a result of that, there's a lot of people just not willing to move forward and hire and grow. What I have done, I've been very active on that front. We just passed a bill called crowdfunding. I would encourage you to look it up. It allows you and others to help raise up to $1 million online with investors. If you go to the Cambridge Innovation Center and go to WeFunder, it's a new financing tool for people like you and others to actually create jobs. The Hire a Hero Veterans Bill, it's something I worked on. I was proud to be at the signing ceremony in which the President signed the bill to allow our veterans who are fighting for jobs to actually get hired by people who are actually coming back from serving our country. There's many other efforts that we've done throughout the time period, but the key is, in order to get these initiatives passed, you need to work together to do it. You can't be taking and raising taxes and have more and more spending when we're in a $16 trillion debt, because that's the biggest concern that I have, is the fact that you are not going to be able to pay back all of the amazing amount of debt that you're incurring.
One of the other big issues in the economy, as you both know, is this question of immigration and the need for immigration reform.
When do we get to do a response here?
Ms. Warren, you both had a chance to respond to the question. You laid out your positions. You have gotten a chance to respond to these issues. In the interest of time here, I want to keep moving here. You had a chance to adequately respond to each other, because immigration is really important, and I think you both know it. The president has said it's one of his biggest regrets that it didn't get passed. I want to introduce another student, Vladimir Saldana, who has a pointed question on this very issue. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vladimir Saldana, and I'm a business, finance, and management student here at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. My family is from the Dominican Republic, and at the age of 16 years old, I was fortunate to become a U.S. citizen. For those young people who are not as fortunate as me, I want to know if you support or oppose the DREAM Act, and can you please tell us why or why not?
Just to be clear, so everybody understands, the DREAM Act is an opportunity for the children of undocumented immigrants to get legal status in this country. Right. Senator Brown, you have called that, just to be clear here, you have called that close to amnesty or a form of amnesty. So you would not support that?
Well, first of all, let me just say that congratulations on becoming a U.S. citizen. And let me tell you that I am in favor of full legal immigration. I have been working on that since being in the United States Senate. And with regard to the DREAM Act, yes, I don't support it. It's a form of backdoor amnesty. It's a form of backdoor amnesty. And
okay, please go ahead. Continue your answer. I'll give you a chance to respond.
Yes.
We need to improve our legal immigration system, and this is a difference between Professor Warren and me. She's in favor of in-state tuition for people that are here illegally. She's also in favor of driver's licenses for people that are here illegally. She's opposed to the Secured Communities Act that will keep our citizens safe, and she's not in favor of securing our border. Now, these are things that we're very, very different. When it comes to the actual DREAM Act, are there things that we can do? Certainly, but we need to be able to have the debate, and they won't bring it up for a debate. They want to bring it up, push it through without any debate whatsoever. And the key to getting anything done on immigration, as I've been trying to do it, the H-1B visas, working on increasing quotas so we can do it legally, is we can't take a class of citizens that are here illegally and move them ahead of the 4 million people that are trying to do it legally.
Ms. Warren.
Senator Brown is right. This is a big difference between the two of us. He voted against the DREAM Act. I would strongly support the DREAM Act. I believe in it. I also believe we need comprehensive immigration reform. I think that means following the law, but we need to do comprehensive immigration reform, comprehensive visa reform as part of that. We need to follow the law, we need to enforce our borders, but we need to do immigration reform, and it needs to happen now. We can't keep putting this off. It isn't right.
We have about 5 minutes left. I want to move through some issues as quickly as we can, because I'd at least like you on the record on some of these things. I think they're important. I want to touch on foreign policy. The war in Afghanistan is drawing to a close as the withdrawal plans have been laid out for U.S. troops to return home. Ms. Warren, I'll start with you. What is an acceptable outcome to the war in Afghanistan, and what is the United States' responsibility to achieve that outcome even after U.S. troops return?
You know, I think that we have always had difficulty with describing that, and as a result, I think we need to get our troops out of Afghanistan as quickly as we can, consistent with their safety.
Before the president's own timeline?
Yes.
So you would bring them home before 2014?
I think it is time to bring our troops home and to stop spending $2 billion a week in Afghanistan.
And
we need that money.
If the government fails and becomes another failed state, the United States doesn't have a responsibility any longer?
You know, the problem is we can't stay and rebuild Afghanistan forever. We cannot do that. And so having unrealistic goals and spending more money is the wrong approach. I just want to say on this, all three of my brothers served in the military. Our service members are incredible. They will do anything we ask of them. They work hard, they are resourceful, but that means we owe them an obligation to put them out in harm's way when we have clear goals in mind, when it's clear what we're going to do, how we're going to accomplish it, and how we're going to get
I want
out.
to try to get to a few issues. Senator.
Thank you, David. As you know, I'm a colonel still serving in the National Guard for 32 years. I'm a ranking member. I'm a ranking member on Armed Services and Homeland Security and Veterans Committee. Take those roles very seriously. I've been to Afghanistan as a senator, and I've been there as a soldier, and I supported the president's surge, and I supported his timetable for withdrawal. I didn't agree with the date because I think it shows our hand, but our goal is there to make sure that the Taliban and Al-Qaeda do not once again join forces and then export terrorism around the region and the world and potentially move on Pakistan that has nuclear weapons. So I respectfully disagree. I will rely on the generals on the ground and our commander-in-chief as to when he wants to bring our troops home.
Would you recommit forces if it became a failed state, if Al-Qaeda returned, if the Taliban came back to power?
Listen, I hope that doesn't happen. It's very difficult to get into hypotheticals. I would rely on the guidance from the president and his generals with hope that he would come to Congress to let us know what his plans are, and then I would make a decision.
A couple of others in our lightning round here. Who's your model Supreme Court justice? Let me see here. That's a great question. I think Justice Scalia is a very good judge. Justice Kennedy. Justice Kennedy is obviously very good, and Justice Roberts. Justice Sotomayor. I think they're very qualified people there who actually do a very good job. Scalia and Sotomayor don't exactly.
Well, you know what? That's the beauty of being an independent, David.
Okay.
You can actually.
If you had to pick one,
Listen, I don't need to pick one. We have plenty of justices up there, and I'm proud of the ones we have.
Ms. Warren, who would be your model Supreme Court justice?
Well, I think it would probably be Elena Kagan.
All right. Let me ask you, Ms. Warren. I wonder why you think that Massachusetts has never elected a female senator or governor.
I don't know.
No idea? Does it trouble you?
Well, right now I'm trying to do something about that.
Senator Brown, do you think that the senior senator from the state, John Kerry, would be a good Secretary of State?
Yeah.
You do?
I've already told him that quite a few times. I think that he has a very good knowledge of world affairs. He's a real leader on that issue, and I look to his guidance when we were doing the START treaty and when we're dealing with foreign issues. Yes, I think he would.
Let me ask you, I've got 2 minutes and I want to do two very important questions, so I'll beg your indulgence. This has been a hard-fought race. Can you each say something that you admire about the other, Ms. Warren?
I think that Senator Brown has a lovely family, and he does. And I agree with him when he ultimately voted to get rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I think he was right on that, and I agree with him very much.
Senator Brown?
Certainly, she's a very hardworking, accomplished professor, and she's certainly very qualified. She has a very hardworking family as well, and as a matter of fact, she is such a good professor. And I've heard from parents who have actually had their kids being taught by her, and they said she's wonderful. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that she can continue to be in that position.
So I saved the most contentious for last.
Oh, come on. What are you talking about?
The worst Red Sox season in decades, I hate to tell you. So, Ms. Warren, does Bobby Valentine deserve another year, or should he be fired?
You know, I had such hopes for Bobby Valentine. I'm still just in wounded mode on that one.
Right. But should he stick around? Should he be given another chance, or should he be fired?
You know,
this is the back page of the Boston Herald we're talking about tomorrow morning. Come on, you got to commit.
Then I give him another year.
Give him another year,
let
Senator.
him build it. Let's see if he can.
Well, I remember in the beginning of the season that Professor Warren said the Red Sox were going to win 90 games, and obviously that hasn't happened, and it's been very, very disappointing. I'll leave that up to the Red Sox management, but certainly we need to do better next year.
You're not going to commit one way or the other?
No, there's a lot of problems, and they need to work it out for themselves.
Okay. We want to move to our closing statements, and we're going to begin with Senator Brown.
Thank you very much, David. Obviously, thank you, and thank you, Professor Warren, and thank you for everybody who is here, obviously participating and listening, and those of you at home who are also watching. Listen, I'm from here. I grew up here. I married a Waltham girl. I went to school here, and I'm, aside from my marriage to Gail of 26 years and the birth of my 2 kids, being your United States Senator has been the greatest honor I've ever had in my life. And I've tried to do exactly what you sent me down there to do in the people's seat, as the people's senator, to read the bills, understand them, see how they affect Massachusetts, our country, our debt and our deficit, and vote. You sent me down there to be the independent voter and thinker, and I've done exactly that. I'm with 50% with my party, 50% with the other party, working to try to find people of goodwill to move our country forward. And this election is about doing just that, because we're going to have some very, very real challenges right now. The challenges are getting our economy moving, getting our debt, our deficit, taxes, spending, jobs, national security. And you need people down there who will actually work together. And that's what I've been doing, and I need your vote. I can't do this alone. And thank you very much, David, for holding this.
Okay. Ms. Warren.
So, thank you again. Thank you for holding us. Thank you for all being here. You know, I'm not a professional politician. This is the first time I've ever run for public office. I got in this because America's working families are just getting hammered. And Washington is rigged to work for those who hire an army of lobbyists and an army of lawyers. Senator Brown he has some good votes, but too often when it comes down to it in the hard votes, he stands with the millionaires, he stands with the billionaires, he stands with big oil companies. He's not there for people who are out of work. He's not there for women who want access to birth control covered by their health insurance. He's not there for seniors who are hoping to pay for prescription drugs. I don't want to go to Washington to work for millionaires and billionaires and big oil. I want to go to Washington to be there to fight for working families and small businesses. That's what this is all about for me.
Elizabeth Warren, thank you very much. Senator Scott Brown, thank you. We want to thank our sponsors, University of Massachusetts Lowell and the Boston Herald, as they shake hands. And I'm over here somewhere. Don't forget to vote November 6th. Thanks very much.
Good job.
Good job.